Psalm 95, a call to worship and obedience. Psalm 95 stands as both a poetic invitation and a solemn warning, blending exuberant worship with a call to faithful obedience. This psalm, often read in both Jewish and Christian liturgies, encapsulates the dual response humanity owes to God: heartfelt praise and sincere submission. It is a passage that speaks across time, echoing ancient Israel's experiences while addressing contemporary believers with timeless urgency. The psalm opens with an enthusiastic call to worship, urging the people to come before God with singing, joy, and thanksgiving. God is referred to as the rock of our salvation, a metaphor rich in meaning. It conveys not only stability and strength but also deliverance, a foundational concept in biblical theology. The call to joyful noise is not mindless exuberance but a deeply rooted expression of confidence in God's saving power. This joy is grounded in the recognition of God's unmatched greatness. Verse 3 makes this abundantly clear by declaring him the great king above all gods. Whether referencing false idols or supernatural beings, the intent is the same: God's supremacy is unrivaled. Further, the psalmist directs attention to creation as testimony to God's sovereignty. The depths of the earth, the peaks of the mountains, the sea, and the dry land all belong to him because he formed them. This comprehensive scope of ownership reinforces the idea that all of nature is under God's dominion, highlighting his power and craftsmanship. There is no part of the created world that falls outside his authority or care. Yet, the psalm does not remain solely in the realm of joyful praise. In verses 6 and 7, the tone becomes more reverent and intimate. Worship here takes the form of submission, bowing and kneeling before God. This is not just an outward act but a posture of the heart. God is no longer described only as king or creator but also as our maker and our shepherd. The shepherd imagery is particularly tender, conveying God's guidance, provision, and protection. His people are likened to sheep, creatures dependent on their shepherd for every need. The call is clear: worship is not complete unless it involves humble recognition of God's authority and care. A dramatic shift occurs in verse 7, turning the psalm from an invitation to a warning. The word today signals immediacy and relevance. The message is not for a distant past but for the present moment. The psalmist warns the audience not to repeat the hardened response of their ancestors during the wilderness journey. Specifically, the events at Meribah and Massah are invoked. Episodes marked by complaint, testing, and spiritual rebellion, despite the people having witnessed God's miraculous provision. In verses 8 to 10, God's frustration with the Israelites becomes clear. For 40 years, he endured a generation whose hearts strayed and who failed to grasp his ways. They saw the signs but missed the message. This tragic pattern of disbelief, despite evidence of divine care, becomes a cautionary tale. The psalmist does not merely recount history, he uses it as a mirror to challenge the listener's own posture toward God. The psalm ends on a sobering note in verse 11, "So I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest." This refers to the Israelites' exclusion from the promised land, yet it also takes on a broader spiritual meaning. Rest symbolizes not only the land of Canaan but also the peace and fulfillment found in God, a rest that transcends physical borders and speaks to eternal realities. Psalm 95, then, is more than a hymn, it is a theological declaration and a spiritual wake-up call. It affirms God's identity as Creator, King, and Shepherd, while also calling his people to respond appropriately, with joyful praise and obedient hearts. The psalm reminds us that worship is not merely about emotion or ritual but about hearing God's voice and responding in faith. This dual emphasis is carried forward in the New Testament, particularly in Hebrews chapters 3 and 4. There, the warning of Psalm 95 is applied to the Christian life. The rest is interpreted as the salvation and eternal peace available through Christ, and the danger of a hardened heart remains a pressing concern. Just as Israel's disobedience barred them from God's promised rest, so too can unbelief and rebellion keep individuals from entering into the fullness of life offered in Jesus. In conclusion, Psalm 95 speaks with clarity and conviction. It beckons us to rejoice in the God who made us and saves us, but also to remain vigilant in our faith. Worship without obedience is incomplete. Hearing God without heeding Him is perilous. Today, as then, the call remains, if you will hear His voice, do not harden your hearts.
Psalm 95. O come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before His presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to Him with psalms. For the Lord is the great God, and the great King above all gods. In His hand are the deep places of the earth. The heights of the hills are His also. The sea is His, for He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, and the sheep of His hand. Today, if you will hear His voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion, as in the day of trial in the wilderness, when your fathers tested me. They tried me, though they saw my work. For 40 years I was grieved with that generation, and said, It is a people who go astray in their hearts, and they do not know my ways. So I swore in my wrath, They shall not enter my rest.